this video, I'm about to show you 10 straw brands you should not be buying and why, along with 5 that are actually better choices and worth buying. Starting with number 10, US Straws. Let's be real, US Straws is exactly the kind of name that doesn't make you think twice, and that's part of the problem. When something sounds generic and national, your brain automatically labels it as standard and safe without actually checking what sets it apart. In reality, most straw brands in this category operate in a low-competition, low-attention space. That means there's very little consumer pressure on them compared to food or electronics. According to general packaging industry patterns, disposable items like straws are often optimized more for cost efficiency and mass production than for material quality upgrades, simply because buyers don't scrutinize them closely. And that's where the consumer side of this gets interesting. Big brands know this category is invisible in everyday life. Nobody is reviewing straws the way they review food ingredients or tech specs. So once a product sits in that no one is really paying attention zone, the incentive shifts from innovation to just staying cheap enough to remain in circulation. So US Straws isn't standing out or trying to. It's operating in a system where being good enough to not notice is literally the business model. And honestly, that's what most people don't realize. They assume absence of attention means absence of manipulation, when in reality, it just means lower scrutiny. Number 9, Aardvark Straws. Aardvark is one of those brands that actually sounds more premium or specialty just because of the name. It doesn't give off that generic supermarket vibe like some other straw brands. It feels like something you'd assume is higher quality without even checking. But here's where the reality check comes in. Aardvark is best known for making paper straws, especially for food service and eco-friendly markets, which already puts it in a very specific category. Disposable products, designed to meet environmental trends, rather than to be long-term durable. Now, to be fair, the move toward paper straws is backed by real environmental pressure. Plastic straw restrictions have been implemented globally due to concerns about plastic waste, especially single-use plastic pollution. So brands like this didn't appear randomly. They exist because regulations and consumer sentiment shifted the market. But from a user experience point of view, paper straws, including Aardvark-style ones, are still known for a pretty consistent trade-off. They soften over time in liquid, especially in cold drinks, which changes how long they stay functional. That's not a brand-specific flaw. It's a material limitation shared by the entire category. And this is where the consumer angle becomes clear again. Big companies don't always improve products in a straight-up better experience direction. Sometimes they shift materials to meet external pressures such as environmental compliance, even if everyday usability takes a hit. So Aardvark sits in that interesting middle space, born of a real environmental need, widely adopted in food service, yet still tied to the same practical limitation inherent in paper-based design. It works, but not without compromise. Number 8, Hummingbird Glass Straws. Hummingbird glass straws instantly sit in a different world compared to regular disposable options. This isn't something you pick up and forget. It's more of a long-term switch product, and that already tells you who these brands are really targeting. People reacting to how aggressively single-use plastics have been phased out in recent years. And that shift didn't come from marketing alone. Governments and environmental policies across multiple regions have pushed restrictions on plastic straws due to marine pollution and long decomposition cycles. So glass-based alternatives entered the space as a response to that pressure, not just as a lifestyle trend. Now here's where the consumer experience changes completely. Unlike paper or plastic, glass doesn't degrade in use. It stays rigid and unchanged. That gives it a very different feel. More permanent, more stable, but also more care required. You're not throwing it away after a drink, you're cleaning it, storing it, reusing it. That sounds good on paper, but it also shifts responsibility back onto the user. It's no longer a passive product. You have to handle it, maintain it, and treat it differently from typical disposable straws. So what you get is a clear trade-off, a more sustainable direction in material choice, but with a lifestyle adjustment attached. It's less about convenience and more about aligning with an entirely different consumption habit. Number 7, Strawsome Glass Straws. Strawsome isn't really competing with regular straw brands. It's competing with a habit. Once you switch to glass straws, The product stops feeling disposable and starts feeling like a permanent object you have to take care of. That shift changes how you experience something as simple as drinking. Instead of using and discarding without thought, you're now interacting with something that stays in your routine. It doesn't disappear after use. It stays visible in your kitchen, reminding you it's part of a different system of consumption. And that's where the interesting part is. This kind of product doesn't succeed just because of material choice. It succeeds because it aligns with a lifestyle where people are actively trying to reduce waste and move away from single-use items, not just in theory, but in daily behavior. But that also means it quietly introduces a new kind of friction, not in use, but in upkeep. It's not complicated, but it's no longer effortless by default. You're now responsible for keeping it in rotation, cleaning it, and incorporating it into a reusable cycle. So Strawsome represents less of a product upgrade and more of a behavioral shift, where the object itself stays simple, but the way you live with it changes completely. Number 6. Go Silly. Go Silly is interesting because it doesn't sit in the fragile glass alternative category. It's part of the silicone wave, where brands try to solve the same plastic problem in a completely different way. Instead of being rigid and breakable, they go soft, flexible, and reusable. And that already tells you something about how this space evolved. Once plastic straws started getting heavily criticized, companies didn't just replace them with a single solution. They split in different directions: glass for rigidity, paper for intentional disposability, and silicone for durability and flexibility. Go Silly fits into that last group. The idea is simple: a straw that bends, doesn't crack, and can survive repeated use without the sharp breakage issues you'd get with glass. That makes it feel more practical for everyday handling, especially in homes with kids or on-the-go use. But there's a subtle shift in experience here. Silicone changes the feel of drinking it softer, slightly different in texture, and less rigid than what most people are used to. It's functional, but it doesn't perfectly mimic traditional straw behavior. So what you end up with is a product that prioritizes durability and flexibility over familiar feel. It doesn't try to look like a classic straw upgrade. It feels more like a redesign of what a straw can be when safety and reusability are the main focus. Number 5. Final Straw. Final Straw actually stands out less because of what it's made of, and more because of how it changes the moment of decision when you're about to use a straw. Most people don't plan straw usage. You just get one with a drink and move on. This product flips that habit completely. Now, there's a pre-step involved. You either have it with you or you don't. That shift sounds small, but it changes behavior in a real way. It turns something automatic into something conditional. No straw available? You skip it. Have it with you? You use it. It removes the default, always provided expectation. The collapsible design is just the tool that enables that change. Its main role isn't just portability. It's forcing the product into a system where availability depends on the user, not the environment. So, instead of focusing on material or durability like other alternatives, Final Straw is more about breaking the automatic habit loop that comes with single-use items. It doesn't just replace a straw. It removes the assumption that a straw will always be there. Number 4. Clean Canteen. Let's be honest, brands like Clean Canteen don't really play in the cheap straw aisle game. They're not trying to be that thing you grab without thinking at a cafe. They're selling you the idea that you're done with that whole disposable cycle altogether. And this is where you start seeing how smartly the shift has happened. Big brands know people are tired of single-use guilt, so instead of just giving you a better straw, they sell you a lifestyle exit from disposable culture. You're not buying a straw anymore, you're buying the feeling that you've opted out of the system. The stainless steel build fits that mindset perfectly. It's heavy duty, long-term, and basically saying, you're not replacing me anytime soon. And that's the whole pitch. Stop thinking short-term, start committing long-term. But here's the consumer side nobody says out loud. Once you buy into this category, the product stops being invisible. It demands attention. You carry it, you clean it, you keep track of it. So convenience doesn't disappear. It just moves from instant use to planned use. So Clean Canteen isn't really about straws. It's about how brands quietly turn everyday objects into identity choices. So even something as small as a straw starts to feel like a statement about how you consume life itself. Number 3, Simply Straws. Let's be real, brands like Simply Straws don't exist because people suddenly got obsessed with straws. They exist because single-use plastic got pushed into the spotlight so heavily that it became politically and socially uncomfortable to ignore. That's the real background here. In the last few years, plastic straw bans and restrictions have been implemented in multiple regions due to concerns about marine pollution and the long decomposition times of plastic waste. So companies like this stepped in to fill that gap. Now here's the consumer reality part. People don't usually say out loud that once a product moves into the eco-alternative category, it automatically gets a moral upgrade in people's minds. You're not just buying a straw, you're buying the feeling that you're doing the better thing, even if the actual usage difference is just material-based. Simply Straws fits into that system with reusable designs, glass, stainless steel, or silicone, depending on the variant, which are objectively more durable than single-use options. But that durability comes with something else. Maintenance becomes part of the deal. Cleaning, carrying, not forgetting it. That responsibility shifts onto the user, not the system. So what you're actually seeing here isn't just a product replacement, it's a behavior replacement. The brand isn't selling a straw, it's selling a habit change forced by environmental pressure and reinforced by consumer guilt plus awareness trends. Number 2, Sipwell. Let's be honest, Sipwell isn't a brand people think about, and that's exactly how products like this survive. They live in the background of cafes, fast food chains, and bulk supply orders, where nobody checks labels or compares performance. In real terms, this is how a lot of straw supply works. It's a high-volume, low-attention category. Restaurants and vendors usually prioritize cost per unit, packaging quantity, and supply consistency over brand identity. That's why names like Sipwell exist quietly in the system. You're not choosing it as a consumer, you're indirectly consuming it through whatever business ordered it. And here's the consumer reality angle. Most people don't even realize they're interacting with different straw suppliers. The experience feels identical, so the market stays invisible. That invisibility is actually what keeps these brands stable. So Sipwell isn't trying to convince you of anything. It doesn't need branding tricks or lifestyle positioning. It operates in a space where not being noticed is the business advantage because the end user isn't the buyer. And the buyer isn't paying attention to details like straw quality in the first place. Number 1, Eco at Heart. You don't really buy eco at heart in the usual sense. You just end up using it without ever stopping to think about it. Most of the time, that's how these kinds of products actually enter your life. Not through decision making, but through whatever cafe, restaurant, or takeaway system you're interacting with. And this is where the consumer reality kicks in. You're not sitting there comparing straw brands before your drink arrives. The choice has already been made somewhere else, usually based on cost, supply convenience, or basic compliance with eco-friendly expectations. So, Eco at Heart lives in that background layer of consumption where visibility is low but usage is constant. It doesn't need to convince you directly. It just needs to be present in the system you're already part of. And that's why it feels so ordinary in your hand. It was never competing for your attention in the first place. But don't worry, it's not all bad. There are actually 5 straw brands that are more durable, safer, and actually worth your money, starting with number 5, EcoBuddy. Let's be honest, EcoBuddy isn't trying to impress you with hype or flashy branding. It sits in that quiet, we're just doing things better category, and you usually only notice it when you actually look closely at what you're using. What stands out here is how straightforward the idea is. Instead of overcomplicating the product, it leans into practicality. Reusable straws designed to replace disposable ones without turning it into a lifestyle lecture. And that's actually where a lot of eco products fail. They try too hard to sell the message instead of just focusing on usability. In real-world use, EcoBuddy fits into that everyday routine mindset. It's not something you think about constantly. You just keep it, use it, clean it, and move on. No drama, no learning curve. From a consumer perspective, this is where it quietly wins. Because people don't want eco-guilt, they want simple replacements that don't feel like extra work. EcoBuddy understands that balance and stays out of your way while still doing its job properly. So instead of feeling like a statement product, it feels like a normal object that just happens to be aligned with a better habit. Number 4, Straw Expert. Straw Expert feels like it was built for people who are done with disposable thinking but don't want their daily life to feel complicated because of it. What's interesting here is how it positions itself, not as a trend eco brand, but as a utility-focused solution. The focus is clearly on making reusable straws feel practical enough that you don't end up going back to single-use options out of convenience. In real usage, the experience is very straightforward. It doesn't try to be decorative or emotional, it's just functional. Use it, clean it, reuse it. That cycle is the entire point. And there's no extra layer added on top to make it feel like a lifestyle product. And this is where consumer behavior becomes obvious. Most people don't abandon disposable habits because they don't care. They abandon alternatives when they feel inconvenient. Straw Expert solves that exact friction by keeping things simple and predictable. So instead of selling an idea, it sells ease of replacement. It quietly fits into routines without demanding attention, and that's exactly why it works in the background of everyday use. Number 3, Highwear. Highwear is one of those brands that quietly sits in the practical upgrade category, rather than trying to sell you a big lifestyle story. You don't really buy it for branding. You buy it because you want something reusable that actually feels usable in day-to-day life. What makes it stand out is its focus on straightforward function. No over-design claims, no complicated positioning, just a simple idea. Replace single-use straws with something you can keep washing and reusing without thinking too much about it. From a real consumer behavior angle, this matters more than people admit. Most reusable products fail not because they're bad, but because they feel like extra effort. Highwear avoids that trap by staying simple enough not to interrupt your routine. So instead of feeling like a switch you have to adjust to, it behaves like a normal household item you just start using. And that's usually what determines whether people actually stick with reusable alternatives. Number 2, Tovla Jr. Tovla Jr. is clearly aimed at a very specific situation: families and kids. And that changes the entire way the product is designed and perceived. This isn't about minimalism or aesthetic branding. It's about safety, usability, and making it easier to form reusable habits in messy, real-world environments. What stands out immediately is how these kinds of products solve a very practical consumer problem. Kids don't treat things gently, and disposable items become wasteful fast. So the idea of giving them something reusable, but still simple enough to handle, becomes the main selling point. From a behavior point of view, this is where the brand actually earns its place. It's not trying to change habits through messaging, it's adapting to how people already live. Parents don't want complexity, they want something that survives daily chaos. So Tovla Jr. sits in that functional family utility space, where the value isn't in branding hype, but in whether it can quietly handle real usage without becoming another problem to manage. Number 1, Juvale. Juvale operates in that bulk supply mindset, where the product is less about identity and more about accessibility. You usually see it in multi-packs, online listings, or general household supply categories, rather than as a brand people actively seek out. And that's actually the key to understanding it. In this space, the consumer isn't always making a highly considered choice. They're often solving a simple problem. I need straws in bulk that won't cost much and will do the job. So Juvale fits into that expectation very cleanly. It doesn't try to create emotional attachment or premium perception. It just exists as a functional option in a crowded marketplace where practicality matters more than branding. From a real-world usage perspective, this is where volume becomes the main value. When something is being used frequently and replaced often, consistency and availability matter more than anything else. So Juvale isn't really competing for attention, it's competing for convenience at scale, and that's why it quietly stays relevant in everyday supply chains.